Hello and welcome to Bendy, a podcast about being flexible and all of the ways that means. Thanks for joining us. My name is Andy Young and I'm one of your nerdy, bookish hosts. Joining me as always is our other nerdy and bookish host, Beth Martin. Beth, a pleasure as always. What's the crack?
I'm really...
That comma is still there.
From last week?
Yes!
Air quote.
I fixed it now. Yeah.
I really love being a nerd and being called a nerd. It's like,
so
nerds
good.
are winning now, man. It's so good.
Yes, totally.
It's totally good. What's the crack? We are building a treehouse. In a tree.
Nice.
An 8x8 platform in a tree, to be exact.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, so the kids were like, we want a tree house. And I was like, we could buy a play set. And they were like, we want a tree house in a tree. And Mike's like, let's figure it out. So it's interesting. We haven't worked on a project together in a long time. Mm-hmm. And most dudes would be like, this is how we're going to do it. And blah, blah, blah. Sure. And he's like, well, I don't know. What do you think? And I'm like, I think we should do, like, he listens to me. No.
A woman?
About construction. I know, right? And, like, cars and, like, art cars and, like, tree houses. Sure. He's like, you always have good ideas. He's like, you think of things I don't think of. And, like, you know, He's like, you have really good input. And so, yeah, so it's awesome. Really nice because I remember, it's funny, like, my parents like would be like working on something and they would be fighting all the way through it. He and I work really well together, and so it's just like a reminder of that. Also, I'm just blabbing. It's like everyone I know is getting divorced right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like 4 people in the last couple weeks. Wow. And I don't know them all well, but it's just like, it's weird. And it's just, so we saw a friend at Home Depot, which is like a lumber, like hardware store. Do you guys have Home Depot?
I don't think so, but I think most people over here would know what it is. We have similar stores. Okay,
so we were there and like, he came up and he's like, how's it going? He's like, yeah. I'm like, we're doing the big D, like divorce. And I was like, oh. Yeah. So, I'm just like grateful that I'm married to like someone who listens to me, a woman, as Andy said. And also I know, right? I'm just grateful to be married to Mike. Especially he's awesome. There's a wave of divorces and it's weird. So
no, that's great. Like I think I said to you before, like so many people tend to get married just for the sake of, check off the old marriage box, and then it's like you don't even seem to like your wife. What's going on here? So yeah, you did it the right way. Actually marrying somebody you like and love,
can build a treehouse without wanting to kill each other.
Yeah, right. Like they are. Just in my experience, they're more of a rarity in this country. I think probably because of the weather, right? But I always have like the idea of them. Like there's something so like evocative about American movies with these big ass tree houses, and it's like it seems so exciting.
The kids are so really excited.
Do you have big trees on your property that are suitable for it?
Yeah, okay. I'll take a picture.
I want to see it.
We should. I think like we did the framing yesterday. It's like on one side, it's because it's on a hill, which is super fun to fucking move cement blocks around on a hill, working in a tree. But I'm being facetious. But like, so it, like on one side, it's like 4 feet off the ground. On the other side, it's probably like 15 feet off the ground. So it's like, it's up there. And it's got like this lovely canopy. It's in we've got weird oak trees. They're like desert oak trees. So I think it's probably like 300 or 400 years old. Which so
cool. That sounds like a solid foundation for a treehouse.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, I love it. That's great.
Next time I'll podcast from the treehouse.
Yeah, from inside the treehouse. Yeah, I love it.
What's the crack with you?
So I went to a live podcast recording last week. It was great fun. I've been to a few in recent years, and they're always great fun. But like certainly with podcasts, it's even if they're big, the audience is still relatively small compared to other things, And like there's in jokes and there's all sorts of things going on. But it was really good fun, and it's a podcast I've been a fan of for quite a while.
What's the podcast?
How did this get made?
Okay.
It's the one.
You've talked about
Paul
them.
Scheer. Yeah, I've talked about them. Jason Mantzoukas. You'd probably know some of them. They've like appeared in comedy shows throughout the years. Like, do you remember a show called The League from about 10 years ago? You maybe know Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So they have both been on that, and Paul's wife, June Diane, was on. She's been in tons of different stuff. She was in Grace and Frankie and things like that. She's loads of different things. Anyway, the podcast is about, like, they've been doing this for like 13 years, but the podcast is about they watch terrible movies.
I love them. I know all of these people. Yeah. I'm looking in my mind palace.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, of course you are. Yeah. So they're great. Yeah, Jason Mantzoukas in particular is a force of nature, and is very entertaining to watch. But like the movie they did was called like Merlin the Return, and was just this movie from like 20 years ago with Rick Meal. Do you know Rick Meal? He was like Drop Dead Fred. Do you remember
he was Fred.
And Tia Carrera, and a few like just random people, and it was this sort of like modern day fable about Merlin arriving in modern time. It was a load of bollocks. Like, it made no sense whatsoever, but it was just so they just talk about it. They talk about it, and they go into the crowd, and like people do songs and things like that, and come with like parody songs and things like that. It's really, really good fun, and it was just a really nice experience to kind of be part of.
I've never been to a live podcast recording. I've been to see like podcasters, like just
hanging out.
Yeah, and like talking and
okay, yeah.
I don't know. That would be the dream, man.
It's like there are so many that do it, and I mean, because I went to one which was it's a D&D podcast, and they run campaigns, and they play characters, and like D&D is essentially improv.
Yeah.
By and large, really.
We literally watched Dungeons and Dragons last night.
Oh, it's so good, isn't it?
It's so good.
It's so good. I rewatched it again recently. Oh, so many good jokes. There's so many really funny jokes in it. I was really surprised at, and it doesn't feel like it's just ticking boxes in terms of we've got to include this. It's got interesting things in it in ways that kind of make sense organically. Yeah. It's great fun. I really hope they make more.
I do too.
But it wasn't.
I know.
Super
That's
popular.
What we were like totally talking. I was like, I don't think it made enough money. So
I don't know. It's just so many good. Like I said, on a rewatch, it was so in that movie at the end when they are all escaping, and Hugh Grant's trying to stop them in the boat, and they cast a big wave. So that was filmed in my hometown. That's Carrickfergus Castle you're seeing there.
No way!
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's so freaking cool. And how apropos.
So but it's a great movie. But like, so that was a D&D podcast I saw. I think it was last year, and it was so much fun. And like, it's really. I think there's something they talk about with podcasts in particular, like the sort of parasocial relationships you build with people, where you don't really know them, but you feel like you do. And I think like it is almost like, I think podcasting and finding it in recent years for me personally. I mean, like, I've been listening to podcasts for over 10 years now. It's one of my perfect sort of forms of entertainment. It's like being part of a conversation that I don't have to speak in is like my dream. So I love podcasts. So yeah, so it was great fun. It was great fun.
Good, I like it. Do you have any occurring?
No, nothing, unfortunately. Nothing interesting.
I got a message from someone we had a quarterly mental health review episode.
Oh yeah.
And I think we were talking about, we might have mentioned psilocybin or mushroom therapy, and so someone said that like this is someone that has medical background, said that mushrooms, I'm going to read this, are very rich and help reduce the risk of developing serious health conditions such as Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. Also reduces anxiety, depression, and PTSD. I've actually taken psilocybin and regular mushrooms like lion's mane and a whole host of other ones for therapeutic purposes. And if people are interested, yes, I would recommend investigating if it's legal in your country.
Yeah. There is a really, and I'm going to forget the name of it now, but there's a really interesting documentary about mushrooms, not just psychedelic mushrooms, but mushrooms generally, on Netflix, the name of which escapes me. We'll try and find it soon, but like, it's a really incredible sort of look into that world, and also really interesting look into why it's not something that's really been investigated. Like, the guy was Paul Stamets, who is the sort of authority. It's
called Fantastic Fungi. I actually used to work with Paul Stamets.
Yes, I remember you telling me. Yeah,
so
that's
he
so
would
cool.
speak
but
at conferences that I would run for doctors.
That's great. See, what's so amazing about that is he's kind of self-made, and there wasn't really anybody studying this stuff and he like made it himself, and it's like so fascinating how, these subsets that could have value to like human, both like mental and physical health, aren't investigated because like, oh, mushrooms are kind of weird, which is
I don't like the way they taste.
It's so interesting. No, they're gross. But yeah, that's a really fantastic documentary and a really kind of interesting look into that world, I think.
Yeah, I remember watching it, and it's interesting, like the politicization, if that's a word, of mushrooms. And like he had bought land in different states. And
yes,
there was I can't remember which state. He was like, oh, they're passing a bill where they're going to make it illegal, so I got to go buy land in Canada. And like he's working with students to help them learn how to do this. And it's a great documentary, and not just the psilocybin aspect, but there's so many mushrooms that really do have amazing therapeutic purposes. And it's also like I didn't know how big fungi could be, like miles all connected, kind of like in Avatar, where it's like, and it's all like, it's all there, it's all under the ground, it's all communicating. And was it this documentary, or I read it somewhere, that basically like they're thinking that the fungi are actually helping other plants communicate with each other, and like using
I think it was
that's like, it's like the phone system. It's so cool.
Yeah,
it's like coral.
I think
we couldn't live without it.
Yeah. And they talk a little bit about it, almost being like the Earth's nervous system, central nervous system, and such. It's very very interesting indeed.
So thank you to our listener for bringing this up, so we could talk about mushrooms more.
Yeah. Do a tight five on mushrooms. Yeah, we could probably talk a lot longer about it. But
it could be its own episode. Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, so I don't think I've got anything else occurring. No, I don't. Okay. In fact, I had nothing to begin with. Never mind.
Good check, though.
Nothing else. Good check, right?
Nothing.
I looked at the blank slot on my page and went, it's still blank. You haven't added anything since 5 minutes ago. But yeah, so I think maybe we can start moving into today's topic.
Andy's so excited to talk about this.
I am so excited.
He's been wanting to talk. I can't believe we waited 29 episodes to talk about it.
Yeah, like I had to check because I whenever I suggested this, so the topic today is comic nerds, and we're going to talk comic books, okay, folks? So strap in. Whenever I pitched this to Beth, I was like, have we talked about comics before? How could I not have pitched comics before? So we haven't, unbelievably. It's interesting, and I think it's tough for me to imagine something I'm more of I advocate more for than comic books in terms of how meaningful they are to me. Like I love other things as well. Like I obviously am a big video game fan, but I think I find them harder to advocate for than comic books.
Like if you had to pick one.
I would be comic books for days. It would be books generally.
Yeah.
I just like those. I think I'd miss that far more than I'd miss video games, certainly. But it's it's so formative for me. It has whenever I really only like I certainly read a lot of sort of British comics when I was a kid, but going into like high school and stuff like that, it was such a kind of catalyst in terms of making friends and things like that. And then I kind of discovered, American comic books, and then it was just off to the races, and I was, hooked. And I love the medium. I think it delivers. It gets a bad rap as a book with pictures, right? All too often is just why would you not read a book? But it really misses the unique sort of storytelling style of marrying pictures with words, and like how you can use that, like especially really clever creators can evoke stuff that's just impossible in a book or even impossible in a movie. It's the great thing is if you've got a talented enough artist, you've got an unlimited budget. You can anything that you can imagine you can have, and it's pretty incredible.
So, I think too, it's interesting because my kids are reading graphic novels. They're not ready for chapter books. They're not old enough yet, but the graphic novels are. It's like I can see the gateway. They love to read. They love reading. They will sit for hours and read. They will reread and reread and reread, and like, there's it's. Charlie's reading Captain Underpants. Is it Dogman or I don't care, but like some of the character names, if I ever get another animal, I'm gonna name it Chubbs McSpiderbutt. He's like, this one, look at him, his name is Chubbs McSpiderbutt, and I'm like, what? Like, it's just so fucking funny, but it's literally like for younger folks, it's like it's a gateway for reading.
It is 100%.
But I love that. It's like, it's the best watching them just like devouring these. And Harper's reading more advanced, like young adult ones, and just she's so invested. Like, when is the next one coming out? And I'm like, I don't spend money on a lot for them, but I will buy them fucking graphic novels. Absolutely.
Yeah, hell yeah. I actually, there's some stuff I'll maybe recommend actually that's be good for. Like, I mean, I have some stuff that is definitely in for kids, but like. I'm like, I love this artist so much. Yeah. Like, I don't want to see. I just want to look at the what he's drawn, But it's interesting as well, and it's something I'd like to touch on as we kind of go through that. Like, the attitudes to comics in different parts of the world are so different. I think that like in the UK, it is very much seen as a childish thing. I think that is a commonality in a lot of British culture. There is like. You hit this maturity line and then you stop. Yeah, it's a generalization, but you know what I mean? You stop enjoying those things, or you used to stop reading those things or enjoying those things, which I think is a really sad way of looking at stuff. But then, I look at somewhere like France, which is, has a much healthier attitude to it. They've got a much kind of richer, more vibrant sort of comic book sort of scene as a result, and, adults and stuff will read them. Like, even like, or I think about, spending time in Japan, you see like adults reading comics in the train and stuff like that. And you just don't really get that here, I mean, not to an extent you do, but not really, not much.
I think here it's interesting. Like, it used to be, not looked down on, but like, like the people playing Dungeons and Dragons or Magic, like those were the ones that were like into comics or whatever. But now, like, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but like once they started making them into movies, it made it cool.
That's true.
It's like I remember like a friend from high school like posting on the internet like Nerds of One, and I think I've said that to Andy before, like billion-dollar businesses have come
It's
from people's imaginations. And yeah, so here I think because of Hollywood, like comic books are
yeah,
now way more popular. But I will say, other than kids or teenagers or young adults, like I don't see, like I won't see people sitting at a coffee shop like reading comic books or graphic novels
yeah,
necessarily, which is sad to me.
yeah. And it's like, and I mean, I would. I don't give a shit, but like, and it's always so interesting to me in terms of the stuff that, it would surprise you some of the movies that have been adapted from comics. There was like, the recent, the Fassbender movie, The Killer, was adapted from a comic. Road to Perdition was adapted
I
from a
didn't know
comic.
that.
Eastern Promises, yeah, so many like
Wow.
wild sort of mature stories that were like are comic adaptations. Um, so I mean, like, and I think it speaks to the breadth of experiences there is out there in the comic world. Like, it's often talked about that it is the perfect example of a genre that has been completely subsumed by a subgenre, in which case superheroes. I mean, you think comic books, you think superheroes, because that's 90% of what there is superhero comics, and I love those comics. I do, but I think it was as I got older and I kind of saw what else was out there, and so there's the ones that spring to mind, and there's kind of formative ones for me were Mouse is such an important one. So it's about um, it's essentially about Nazi Germany, but about this wee mouse family going through Nazi Germany, and in terms of softening that subject matter to make it palatable so people can kind of understand it a little bit better. It's such a fascinating way, and it is hard hitting. Like, it doesn't pull any punches, but because it has that sort of, oh, it's a little family of mice, it's a kind of like, and it doesn't detract from the thing either, and it doesn't make it doesn't make light of it either. It just kind of gives you a sort of a soft sort of entryway into something that's quite challenging, actually. um, Another one that really kind of sticks with me, and I reread it again recently, is one called Persepolis or Persepolis. So it's I'm gonna butcher her name, Marjan Satrapi, I think. I hope that's right. So essentially, she grew up in Iran before it sort of uh, became overtaken by religious leaders and things like that, and they started forcing people to wear veils and become stricter in terms of their religious leanings. And she kind of just talks about her life living to parents who were not in favor of that, and both how that affected their friends who were like fighting against this system in this very restrictive system, how she was sent away to avoid that, how that affected her, how that it's really powerful and so interesting, and like such a cool way of telling that story, because she's an artist as well, and she just does it with wee sort of insights, like small stories. It's a really wonderful comic, but like I think that the average person would have no idea that these things existed, honestly. And I think that I don't think that I would have ever read a book about that. If somebody told me this is somebody's experience, I would be like, yeah, okay, that sounds interesting, worthwhile, but I don't know if I would I don't know if I'm gonna make time to read that. But I think because comics are a quicker read, that you can dip into them more often, or try out more stuff, I
It's more
guess.
palatable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, very much so.
So, what comic made you fall in love with reading comics?
Oh, Spider-Man.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. He's still my boy more than anything else. I I love that character so much, and like I remember quoting it. Ron got me to quote it. Remember?
What with great
our yoga teacher training goes, what does Spider-Man say? And I say,
great power comes great responsibility.
Great responsibility. Like,
I do remember that.
Right? And I, of course, I knew that. Of course, I did.
Was that pool school?
Yes, it was pool school. Yeah. And I genuinely think, in terms of where I'm at,
he's a fellow nerd.
Yeah. You had no idea how deep that goes. Yeah, at that stage, now you do. But like, I really think that superheroes and Spider-Man in particular really molded how I look at the world, and like how I, in terms of my sense of right and wrong, had such a big way, because like, they are, not real, like but they, they really put themselves on the line through the ringer for the things that they believe in, for the people that they believe in, that, especially Spider-Man in particular, mistakes that he's made, he pays for them in big ways. He's always kind of an underdog, but he always kind of does the right thing. Like, that has just, been has been something that's been influential on me my whole life, for sure.
It's one of the best quotes ever.
Yeah, it's an incredible one.
It is incredible. And like, my kids know that, and they apply that in their own life, and it's so cute to see that. And I do too. It's like, and we all have power. We all have great power.
Yes.
And
yes,
it really it translates to everyone, and I love that.
It does.
I love that. So mine were, I'm embarrassed.
No, it's
the
okay.
Archie comics and Katie Keene.
Yep.
And I remember. So okay, I'm gonna ask you the same question. Like, do you have a certain memory associated to like early comic book reading? And mine, is being in North Carolina, and I remember going to the market, and they had like you would walk in, and they would always have like a big bin with live soft shell crabs. I know.
Wow.
So you walk in, and like there's the soft shell crabs, and like sometimes some parents would buy some, and then I would turn to the left, and there would be do you remember the comic book racks?
Yeah.
So there would be like the rack, and you'd stand there and spin the rack and find like the right Archie, which one haven't I read, and like bringing those home, and just like getting completely absorbed in this treasure. And then at the very back of the comic book, they had like toy advertisements, and you could be like, and I would, I would get like one comic book for like 2 months or something. Like, my parents weren't shelling it out all the time. So I would reread, and then like circle all the toys that I was never going to get, but like the ones I really wanted. And I just like have that's like a memory that has always stuck with me. So do you have anything like visceral like that?
Yeah, I the key memory, and it was with a friend, one of the friends I made in high school, was like one day, I think we missed PE. I don't know why. We maybe didn't have our,
because you skipped
PE gear or whatever. We skipped, and instead we read a Spider-Man comic, and I still remember that. It's seared into my head. And
skipping school to read comic books.
Yeah, rebels.
So dangerous.
So such badasses. Like, and I still kind of, because he was an artist as well, and I liked writing, and I always thought that we would do something together. Like, we kind of drifted apart as time went on, unfortunately, but it was always something I kind of had hoped would happen with us. It just kind of didn't end up going anywhere. But that is so visceral to me. Like, and I still have memories of whenever I went to, so I think I've said before, in my teenage years, my parents took us to Orlando for like Disney and things like that, and also California, and then we went to like Disney, and we went to San Francisco and San Diego and things like that. But I always was like, and this was still when you were looking stuff up in phone books, I would like find comic shops and phone books and like get them to take me to comic book stores. And I still like remember going to a comic book store in Orlando and just being like it was huge and it was so incredible and it just kind of blew me away.
Fabulous. Yeah. I mean, I guess my question is, do American comic books dominate the comic book market?
I mean, Japanese comic books are massive as well. I would say, and like not just Japan, but like Asian in general. So also some Korean stuff and things like that. But like, I read some Japanese stuff as well. I think it's interesting. I think I would have said maybe 10, 20 years ago it would be mostly American stuff, but I feel like Asian comics are becoming so much bigger now. And just anecdotally,
once Akira came out, it was like, yeah.
That really was the floodgates opening. Yeah, it really was. That's an incredible comic and so much better than the movie because it's so much more detailed in ways that I think the movie needed a wee bit. But like, and I didn't do this intentionally, this chair that I've bought, right?
Your gaming chair?
Turn around. My gaming chair. So it's...
Oh, what?
You probably can't see it fully. I'll take a picture of it and put it up. But like, essentially my gaming chair is... I wheeled around there so Beth could see it. It's a My Hero Academia chair. And like, I didn't buy it for that reason. I bought it because it was green. I like green. Also, it was like, they were on sale. I guess they didn't sell many of them. But like, it's... So one of my friends, who's a fellow yoga teacher, she got a young kid. I think he's about 12, 13 or so. And she showed me pictures of them about a year or so ago, and they were going to a convention dressed as characters from this. And I was like, oh, I know those characters. I know who they are. And I saw him before. Like I went on a walk with them, and I was chatting to him about it. And then, like, recently I was at her 40th birthday party and he was there for a while. And he just, like, came up to me and goes, are you still reading My Hero Academia? And I'm like, yes. Like, oh, yeah. And I were talking and we just had a nice conversation about it. And I was like, it just made me really happy that he remembered and he wanted to talk to me about it, But I don't know how I got onto that. I got carried away. Yes, you asked me about American comics. So yeah, I think that it's a mix of mostly American still, but there's a lot of Asian comics doing the rounds these days, and like a smattering of French comics as well, and things like that. But like translated, obviously.
There's a lot of Japanese comics at the library, But it's interesting. I looked the other day. They put them all in either children's or young adult. There's no adult comics section, at least not in our tiny town.
But it's so interesting, and I still remember, and it still happens now. It's because a lot of people just don't get them and think, oh well, they're for kids, obviously. And I remember you used to find comics in the kids section. I was like, this is not for kids at all. It should not be in here.
Like Grendel should not be in the children's section.
Yeah. Really wild stuff. Or like we have one, Heavy Metal. I don't know if you remember Heavy Metal. So Heavy Metal was like, I don't even know if it was a comic necessarily. It was like a magazine, but it was just like, women in like chainmail bikinis, with heaving bosoms, flying dragons and shit, and like you'd see those in beside Spider-Man. You'd be like, I don't think this should be here.
So have you ever taken a break from comics?
That's a good question. Probably when I was away in like, South Korea, because it'd been harder to find English language stuff like that. Though I do remember actually ordering stuff from Amazon, comics from Amazon, and like I got my friend a gift from Amazon on his birthday of a comic book as well, because I know he was kind of starved of them. So
no.
Not really, no. No. I
like it.
I mean, I'm either reading a book or reading, I've always got something on the go, really. So even if it's a short stint away from comics, they're never that far away.
So do you prefer printed or digital?
Oh, printed. Yeah. It's not even a question. It truly isn't. Like, there's something about the ritual. Like, so you used to, well, you get comics and you would have like they'd be bagged. I'm sure you've seen that. So like the ritual of like taking them out and making sure the tape doesn't catch in the comic, and I like the smell of cracking a fresh book. It's like opening a fresh board game. It's like, oh yeah, this is the good stuff.
What is it? Olfactory.
Olfactory, so, yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
olfactory, like sensation.
It's all of it. Like, I mean, and it's like, and that absolutely comes from me having done it for so many years. But yeah, it's very much so, very much so. I just Friday just passed because I have a collection of single issue comics.
I was gonna ask that.
They are. So I have 10 boxes. I'm gonna have I've got measurements here. The boxes are. So the boxes are the depth of a comic book, so the standard comic book size. They are lengthwise. They are 73 centimeters long. So that's individual comics stacked next to each other, 73 centimeters of that, and I have 10 of those boxes filled with comics.
You're talking to someone.
Do you not use centimeters?
It's a metric system.
Americans.
I'm not going to do the math.
Yeah. So like they are.
So I mean, how many centimeters?
They're 73 centimeters, so they are certainly as big as this desk, I would say, and I have 10 of those filled with comics.
Okay, so that's 20 for Americans. It's like 29 inches. I'm sorry.
Wow, yeah, that seems like
we're
actually,
still
really
holding
does.
out. We're like one of the only countries who uses the metric system. It's really annoying.
Holding on. There is still a fair amount of like inches actually in this country now and again, but centimeters these days. Mm-hmm. But like, I mean, that's a lot of comics. I mean, I'd say you're talking at least 1,000, probably thousands. Kind of insane. So I was kind of cataloging them, finding the interesting ones, because I'm going to see about selling them, just because they have meaning for me. But I'm also like not too sentimental. Like I haven't really looked at these for like 10, 15 years. I prefer like collections these days more than anything. Yeah. So I'm just like, there's no real point me holding on to these. Why not sell them and get a bit of money, especially at a time when I kind of need a bit of money, Mm-hmm. Pardon me.
So do you connect comics with like life events?
That's a good question. I don't think so. Like I can identify certain things that like sort of light bulb sort of moments that are kind of centered around comics. Like there is a famous sort of comic book, and it's from the 90s. A guy called Scott McCloud decided he wanted to write a book on like the language of comics, how they work, and it was called Understanding Comics. And as he was putting it together, he realized, well, would this not make more sense as a comic book? If I'm going to do like an educational text, why not do it as a comic book? And it works brilliantly. And it was kind of like, and this was still early when I was still like reading a lot of superhero comics when I first encountered it, and I was like, oh wow, there is literally the potential of this kind of art form is kind of limitless. And it was such a kind of a light bulb moment for me. It really was.
So what if you had to pick like your top favorites?
Oh.
Sorry to torture you.
Sleeper's a comic I read probably once a year. It's like, it is a it's sort of like a postmodern superhero comic. It's about this sort of superhero who's like a double agent for a kind of criminal organization, and it's a masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. It's Ed Brubaker, who is probably one of my favorite writers. And like, he's written a ton of stuff. Like, he's written stuff for Marvel and I think DC as well. He wrote a series called Criminal, which is just he kind of loved all the sort of pulpy pulpy sort of novels, the trashy sort of crime novels, and he wanted novels. To do some. Yeah, and he wanted to do like a comic book version of those. I adore. There's a book called. So there's a series of novels called Parker. Okay. And there's movies made of them. There's a handful of movies made of Parker and stuff like that. So one of my favorite artists is a guy called Darwin Cook. He died a few years ago, unfortunately, and he did these books. He decided he wanted to do comic book versions of these books, and they are beautiful. He was such an incredible artist. These like Art Deco works of they're so beautiful, and his art style compared to some other sort of comic books is quite simplistic. For what he did was for each of the stories, he picked a kind of color set. He only uses a handful of colors, and the colors kind of represented the story. It's really a staggering achievement, I thought. He didn't get to finish them all, unfortunately, before he passed away, but what he did finish were just sensational.
I hate it when that happens. You're like, what do you mean you died?
I know.
There's work to be done.
I know. But he was, an incredible talent. He really was. And it's interesting because, like, I think that's one of the cool things about Western comics, in that oftentimes it's a partnership between, an artist and a writer. What's interesting about, like, a lot of Asian comics is oftentimes the writer is also the artist, which is such an incredible amount of work. Like, it kind of blows my mind. So, like, you can follow the artists, you can follow artists you love, you can also follow writers you love, and sometimes the combination doesn't work for you, but, like, you tend to find guys who do stuff that you find interesting and you kind of keep going back to them,
So, did you ever, like, what were comics, did you guys get the Sunday paper with, like, the comics?
Sort of. Yeah, we did. It's not the same. I understand this as an American thing because it's in a lot of movies and stuff like that. Not real, like the funnies, right? Is that what you call them? Yeah. I don't think we had it in quite the same way, but we did have comic strips in newspapers and stuff. Okay.
Yeah. So we would get, and this is like, I'm totally dating myself, but we would get the newspaper every day, but Sunday, like, we would get like the Sunday comics or the funnies, and it would be like 4 or 5 pages like total, but it would be all of it Garfield and the Far Side, and all of the, like, those I also remember and love, and I feel like they're, because we don't have a printed paper, like, that's lost now. That's a lost art. Those aren't as popular. Like, the kids don't know who Garfield is, or if they do, it's because it's a movie. And I feel for them that they don't get that, like, Sunday experience.
No, I hear you, and I mean, like, the one, because we certainly had Garfield, like, the one, and I'm sure you'll remember this as well, the one, like, that I adored as a kid was Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin and Hobbies.
Calvin and Hobbes.
Like, and we didn't get them as I don't think it was newspapers over here, but we kind of got collections of them, and I adored that comic so much. I mean, it's just like childhood distilled in such a kind of perfect way. It's just the best.
I still use their game of Calvin Ball, where they just change the rules like whenever they want, and I'm like, when I'm in a situation and someone's changed the rules, and I'm just like, oh, okay, we're playing Calvin Ball, and like, not many people get that reference, but I know you do. So
I also have such respect for him in terms of, he never really was like, I am selling the likeness for this so I can make a small fortune off it. If he did, he would be a multi-millionaire.
Never do it.
He just walked away at one point because I think he wasn't happy with how the newspapers were dealing with him, and he was just like, yeah, I've had enough, and I have such respect for that, truly.
I do too. It's like, it's not in its purest form, so I'm out of here.
This is it, exactly.
He had ideals and morals.
And like, he did. And like what a body, and still what a body of work that he left. Yeah, absolutely. I would have sold it in a heartbeat. Are you kidding me? I went whoever the Garfield creator was just like, yeah, yeah, you freaking license anything you want.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
So,
But
I have to ask the question, and I'm sorry, but
mm-hmm.
Marvel or DC?
Oh, Marvel.
Same.
It's not even like I mean, like I'm such a Spider-Man guy, but like, and I did read some sort of Man DC. I read The Flash for a while, but like, uh, yeah, Marvel always spoke to me more than DC. You know, so yeah, it was.
It feel
Yeah,
like it's silly, but it almost feels like Marvel just has more like heart and soul, and
yeah.
it's
They talk
like
about
less
like
capes and more like I don't know.
I've seen it broken down in an interesting way in that like Marvel a lot of the times was ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances because they have powers or because whatever, whereas the DC is more about this is a standard place of existence and then these gods arrive and how does the world deal with these gods, and it's because like even somebody like Batman who is ostensibly non super powered is beyond the peak of human perfection in terms of like strength, intelligence, planning, all these things. And I think that's such an interesting, and I could see the appeal of both. It's just for me, I kind of like that whole sort of, it's why I love Spider-Man so much, because like, even though he is powerful in so many different ways, he's like such a scrappy sort of underdog, and always smiling in the face of adversity. I always find that so inspiring, to me personally.
So he's definitely your favorite character.
Yeah, he's up
Okay.
there. I do love Daredevil as well.
I'm a Doctor Strange fan. Like if I could have
Sure.
powers, that's me, like I love all the mystic stuff.
Yeah. And like even his like like whenever he was first created, it was like trippy sort of 70s hippie shit. I kind of love his origin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's so many Marvel heroes I like, but those are probably my top two, but like I just I just kind of love the form, and if like somebody was told me I should read a run of this hero, it's great, it's somebody I trusted, I would just read it. I wouldn't need to be one of my guys. One of my guys.
So how much do you spend a year on comics?
So if you'd asked me that question maybe 5-6 years ago, the number would have been far higher. I would say I don't spend very much on them at all these days. I would maybe I honestly, it's got to the stage where if I spent 100 quid on them in a year, that's a lot to a couple of $100, which is historically very low for me in terms of comic books. I reread a lot of stuff that I have. Also, I have a lot of friends who have comics that I haven't read, and I borrow stuff off them. So because like that Japanese comic that I'm reading at the minute, my friend has like 40 volumes of it, and I'm like, perfect. Let me just get into that.
Don't fight with him.
No, I won't. Not until I'm done. I'm nearly finished. Then we're gonna have a big fight.
Prepare yourself. So, what is your absolute favorite series or single comic?
Like it probably is. The Sleeper is the one that I go back to again. It's not one that nobody will have heard of, but like I adore that comic so much. I go back to it multiple times. I think it's well written. It's like
Sleeper.
It's
or
still about
Sleepers?
superhero. Sleeper. And even though like I like comics that aren't all about superheroes, like superheroes are so intrinsic for me to comics that I kind of like that this is a kind of a twist on what they are, and it does such interesting things with them. Also, what I love about it is it has a definite ending, and that is one of the big problems with comic books generally, is that they have been serialized for 60 years, some of them, and it's like, how do you tell a compelling story whenever it's been running on that long, when you don't have an ending, and so I gravitate more to things that have or tell a complete story, you know.
And no one ages.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that would be compelling. Like 60 years, but like they progress and they age and they get married and divorced and you know.
Yes,
yeah,
really
hard
if that
having
happened,
kids
but
and I'm trying to like save the world.
But Spider-Man's like still in his 30s or something like that. It's like no, dude, what's happening here? You know. But like I think another recent one I really love more than anything. I love like two-hander sort of comic books. So I love comics that are like two kind of core cast members that kind of play off each other really well. And in recent years, there's a comic book called Headlopper that I've really loved, and it's I'm going to tell you one I think that your kids might enjoy in a minute as well. Actually, but Headlopper is essentially this sort of barbarian kind of warrior who kind of he walks across the land and gets involved in different things, but the two-hander is that he has in a story that predates the book, and you're kind of finding more about their history as time goes on. He decapitated this witch, but the witch's head stayed alive, and he has the witch's head tied to his belt, and she's like this antagonist, and she's constantly like talking shit to him, and he's like this really kind of stoic, strong guy. It works beautiful, and she's like laughing at him and things like that.
It's like something you really wish great. Bruce Campbell starred in.
Oh, exactly. It is very much that. Yeah. But the other ones, there's an artist I love called Chris Samney. I don't know. He's got. It's these artists that have a sort of a classic sort of style, you know, a sort of 60s, 70s sort of style I really kind of gravitate towards, and he's really he's great at that. But he did a book with his daughter called Jonah and the Unpossible Monsters that I have 2 volumes of that your kids might like, because it's just about this like family, and they have this like younger daughter who's like almost like, you know, a Neanderthal, barely who can barely talk, but like she like but she like goes, but they come across monsters in this land that they're in, and she just like kicks their ass. So it's like such a kind of like empowering tale, you know. It's really great, but they might enjoy that.
Thank you. Are you saying you're gonna give them to me?
I will give them to you, actually.
I'll see if I can get them at the library.
But you know, I don't like. There's other. I don't know. Like another one that I really adore is Usagi Yojimbo, which is a kind of, it's about a samurai rabbit, right? And it's pretty famous.
This sounds very familiar. I think I have, yes.
The guy, the creator, talks about how it came from this idea that he was thinking about, you know, the Japanese samurais wore their hair in like top knots, and he was like, can you imagine if a rabbit had his ears tied together in like a top knot? And like apparently that's where the idea came from, and it like uses a lot of like tropes from like old sort of samurai films and stuff. And there's like a blind samurai who he kind of has an antagonistic relationship with, and but for a, you know, a book about a comic or a cartoon rabbit who is a samurai, it really gets really emotional and deep. Really? The guy's such a talented writer. There was like there was an issue, and it was just, he was traveling to this village, and this village was a village of kite makers, and the story was about 10 pages of how this guy builds kites in the traditional Japanese style.
That's interesting.
And it was like, right?
Yes.
And it just comes out of nowhere. And I think that's what I love about this sort of stuff. I want it to kind of surprise me, and that's such an amazing book for doing that. I think it really kind of takes you in really places that you just don't expect.
Mm-hmm. So for our listeners, why do you recommend that they read comic books?
Well, I mean, I suppose it's like, why not? I mean, I suppose why wouldn't you read comic books? But my thought is that ask yourself why what your your attitude or your opinions of comics are, and if it's like, well, they're for kids, then challenge yourself to
find your inner nerd.
Yeah, there's a and I actually wrote it down because I thought it would come up, and there's a C.S. Lewis quote, and I always come back to it. I always wish I could remember it verbatim. I'm just not a kind of guy who can remember quotes verbatim, but so C.S. Lewis has said this: when I was 10, I read fairy tales in secret, and would have been ashamed if I had been found doing so. Now that I am 50, I read them openly. When I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness, and the desire to be very grown up. And I always really like that, because I think that, like, I don't know, there is something childish about comics, but like, that's okay. There's like, it's people seem to think that they need to, like, he put it better than I put it, move past certain things whenever they get to a certain age. And it's like, why deny yourself something that you enjoy just because you've reached this kind of like predetermined line in the sand? It's just kind of staggering to me. And even within that, there are so many comics that really do embrace that, but there's also so much out there that really kind of, will educate you, will allow you to look at things in a different way, will give you a glimpse into a world that you won't find in other mediums. Books can do it in a great way, but I think that comics, it's just a different angle, it's just a different way, it's just a different kind of set of tools that allow you to, a window into a world that you just maybe wouldn't know about otherwise. So
I also love
comics.
But I also love, it's like when you read a book, like, you develop the character's voice in your head. You see, like, so it gives you really, like, you get to see what the writer is really seeing, and that is so cool. That is so cool. And that you don't even find that in movies, right? Because
no,
because they fuck it up. They chop it up,
and they just bombard you with stuff, and it's like, and there's like, right, we have to hit these quadrants, we have to hit this point at this point in the film, and blah blah blah, and there's more than a few comics that really don't have much writing at all. It's just visuals, and it's such an interesting, and the use of that without words, you can be saying something that you really couldn't do in a book. I mean, you can't just have like if you're reading a book and it's like there's now 40 pages of blank 40 blank pages, you'd be you'd wonder what
you're like, do I need to be journaling right now?
Yeah, what's going on?
What kind of person would you be like if you didn't have comic books in your life?
I don't think I'd be as, because like, that I'm kind of like silly and goofy, and I like, I like genre stuff, I like weird things, I like exploring weird stuff, and I think that comics and the reaction I get from some people for liking comics has kind of pushed me in that direction. I don't, I do want people to like me a lot, but like, I also kind of, there's a big part of me who likes to, be contrary, do the thing that, my mom says I'm a contrarian, and I don't think I do it intentionally. I think it's just innate to me, and I think comics are such a big part of why I am like that,
I think that's wonderful. I think it's wonderful that you have that relationship with them. I mean, no, because I know you well, and I know how important they are to you, and I do think that they, like, I think that they've shaped you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like I say, the with great power comes great responsibility still resonates with me today, and I think it always will. And how I think about justice and things like that. I mean, like, I don't, I can, in terms of, the whole vigilante, beating up criminals. I'm not sure I'm crazy about that, but, it's, the morality of it has always kind of spoken to me and kind of shaped how I've, like, approached life as well,
Well, you're wonderful, so keep reading them. You're
Thanks.
welcome.
Yes,
Here's the permission.
Don't have to tell me twice. I haven't. I suppose I before we kind of get to Joy, do you have anything you want to talk about? I feel like it's just me talking about comics for the past hour. I hope that's okay.
I guess, like, the only thing, like, I did take a break. I would say comic books haven't necessarily been directed towards females.
That's a very good point.
And so a lot of the comics that I read were because, like, dude friends of mine were like, you should check this out. You should check this out. Like, friends from high school were like, you need to read Akira. You need to read Grendel.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed them so much. But then I kind of went to college, and my college friends didn't really read comics. So I had a big break from reading them. And now that I've got children and they, like, graphic novels are, like, part of our lives, it's just so nice to have it. Like, I did have a break, and it's like having them back in my life feels so good, and reading them with the kids, and, like, Chubbs McSpiderbutt, can never say that too many times. The hilarity that it infuses into our daily life, these stories and the characters, it's like this whole new world has reopened for me. To not whole new world.
Yeah. This
world has reopened to me, and it feels really good. And I just want to encourage, like, women to, like, read these things, because it is a whole genre that is so creative and so endearing and has so many wonderful lessons. And I just,
I think as well, and it certainly was not the case back in the 90s, but there's a lot more female creators in the field now as well, writing really interesting stuff. So it's a good, I mean, the death of comic books has been something that's been talked about for many, many years, but they're still hanging in there. So I think it's now as good a time as any to, like, find something that's appealing to you and checking it out.
Yeah, totally. So I'm glad. I'm glad we went here, man.
Good chat. Congratulations, us. And if you want to, like, send us comments about how great a chat it was, we'd appreciate it.
Talk about comics.
Yeah. Listen to me talk about comics. I mean, like, I got to talk about them conservatively for another, like, 24 hours. But yeah, so I think probably we're starting to move towards the end. So the question of dread. Beth, what's been bringing you joy this week?
My children are back in school.
Yeah.
So spring break is over. So we love pigs in our family. So one of the things we did over spring break was there's a breeder of pot-bellied pigs that's, like, maybe like 40 minutes from our house, and they breed them, but they also let you come and play with the baby pigs for like $10 or whatever. So I got to hang out with a bunch of tiny little, like, they had 3 days old, like, little mini pigs, and then, like, ones that were a week old, and then ones that were like 2 months old, and then the big pigs that are, like, I don't know, the size of a bulldog. So that brought me joy.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. I was supposed to be thinking about my joy as you were saying that, and
I thought you were talking about pigs.
No, it's
you
okay.
can litter train them.
That's
I know, and
okay, yeah, because the pigs are, like, really smart.
They're so
right?
smart, and I had one that was like following me around, and it was like checking me out and, like, trying to create a relationship with me, and it was, like, the most endearing thing. And they had, like, a mud bath, and like they just kept, like, one of them, like, just, like, rolled in sideways. They eat everything, including, like, humans.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true.
So yeah, they're just a great animal, and there's a whole like cult of bacon, right?
Yeah.
And I think like it's faded a little bit, but like I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago, like it was super cool. It was hip to eat bacon and like have a bacon
Yeah.
dartboard with like bacon on it and bacon shirts and
Yeah.
like I'm not saying don't eat bacon. I'm just saying I don't because I
Yeah.
really want to get a fucking pig and it's probably going to happen
Yeah.
in the next year.
Amazing.
And
Love
I'm going
it.
to name it Chug the Big Spider Butt.
Yeah, that's a good name for
I
a
know,
pig,
right?
in fairness.
What's
I suppose.
Go ahead.
Oh,
No.
so what's okay.
No, you can talk about meat or bacon.
Nah, no, I was going to talk about. No, there's a show. How to with John Wilson. I don't know if I've talked about it before. So I started back into season 3 of it, and it's just such a unique show. In the it's essentially this guy just films everything and had done for years and years, and he was basically worked with some folks in HBO, and they put together a show, and the shows start off with a theme. So for example, he's like understanding wine. So it's him like in a shop trying to figure out what wine's good.
Sure don't. That's me.
No, me neither. I know, but in terms of the paths it takes him down, because he just has conversations with people, and it just leads him down these weird avenues, and you have no idea where you're going to end up, and it's always wonderful. Like in one of the episodes, he talked about like I don't know how they got to this. I can't even remember what the start of the episode was, but they were like in a choir, and he talks about like this performance his men's choir did like years ago, and he starts saying, well, and as we came to realize, the choir, the competition was put together by Nixium, which is the cult. And then it's like, whoa, holy shit, where did this come from? And it just went down such a fascinating path. Or like he one time was just, I can't remember, again, I do not remember where these things start from, but like he was driving along and he saw a guy with a flatbed truck and like a smokestack set up on it, and it was pumping out like so much exhaust fumes, and he stopped the guy, and like he followed the guy to like the shop and talked to the guy about it, and the guy invited him back to his garage and started talking about like smokestack culture, and like he just lets them talk. And this guy immediately like saw how hollow it was and was just like panicking and like trying to over explain and trying to justify why he pumps fumes into the atmosphere for no reason. Like the thing was set up to pump extra fumes into the air, and it's like, what's wrong?
I've seen trucks like that.
Wild. But it was just, he just films people and he just lets
What's
stuff
the name
happen.
of the show?
It's How To with John Wilson.
I want to watch this.
Dude, give it a go. There's only 3 seasons and they're only like 30 minutes long, so there's not tons of it, but it's a very fascinating show. I think you'd dig it. And he's a sweet nerdy guy. He's really interesting. He's got this amazing relationship with his like landlady. It's really fantastic.
I love humans being humans.
Yes.
Like in their own environment, right? This is like right up my alley.
Yeah, you'll dig this show. You'll dig it. It's great. It's great. And it's unlike anything else. It's definitely worth a look. So How To with John Wilson, if anybody at home is interested. It's a good one.
I'll hashtag it.
Yeah.
Hashtag.
But yeah, I think we are all done. We're getting to the end. As always, folks, we like to remind you, if you could, we'd appreciate you following us or liking our videos or listening to our stuff, whatever.
Yes, please.
Whatever way you can,
Yes,
we'd appreciate it. Yeah, but then we just like to remind you, as always, to
Bendy.
Yeah. That's good. All right. We love you.
Bye, bye, bye.